Hello, Cheryl, and hello, Larry. It's nice to see you.
Great
You know,
seeing you, Inez.
okay. What about Cheryl? Are you having a great time now? Is everything is good for your conference?
Well, it's an experience putting one together. This is the first time I've done it, and I'm doing it myself, so I'm just getting bits and pieces done along the way. But I've been really happy with the number of people that have already put in proposals, and the goal is to how has Dave Elman influenced them in their own career or their own techniques, and to create this collaboration of what Dave himself did.
Okay. Well, what we're going to do is just cover some of what Dave did because Dave is really a giving person, and then go back to the conference later on. Okay, and we'll firstly start with, when Dave started with the Elman induction, and that was what year early start?
If you're looking for the very first portion of it, it would be about 1912,
Yeah.
which is when he realized that what he was learning out of Bernheim gave him the key to what we now refer to as fractionation. He never used that word because it wasn't even invented yet. And so he was using a primitive form of what we today call the DEI. Way back then, he cleaned it up a bit and made it more able to handle a larger type of person, not just his school buddies, but kids,
Yeah.
adults, everything else. When he went into vaudeville, then he was out of vaudeville for many years, and then he was giving a hypnosis show in 1949 when a number of physicians approached him. They had all taken courses in hypnosis, but were unable to use it in their medical offices. And they indicated to him what the requirements that they saw for it to be useful medically were, and said that he was the only person they'd ever seen whose normal stage show included those elements. So that sort of laid out what he was going to try for, but the requirements he also put on it, which to me are the heart of it in the various variations we have today, is direct suggestion, rapid, and using lots of tests and convincers. In fact, the DEI is basically a whole series of tests and convincers until you attain what you're looking for in the way of state. Today we have thousands of variants of Dad's work. Some of them don't admit that they are variants. Some of them do. I really don't care. They're basically descendants of it, and they basically stick to those 3 points. And the good ones, or the medical ones, tend to then add the things the doctors needed for medical use. But they're all basically descended from that 1949 point of trying to combine and smooth it out for that purpose. And if you read through Dad's book, you'll probably find dozens of variants. And people say, well, that's the handshake version, or that's the this, or that's the that. But examine them. They're all basically descended from the one that I just described.
Well, I came to I came to Elman by the way of Jerry Kein, and he was saying that you had to experiment and you had to move, you had to try and move it forward. So I think that's what we did, and I ended up in the Simpson protocol, and you ended up where you are, and everybody owes Dave Elman kudos for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it
No.
is interesting to see how many people were influenced by it. And did you cover in 1912 is when he started to put together those components?
I mentioned
Yeah.
it, I didn't go into it in great detail.
So it was his father. He saw his father died when he was 8 years old, but before that he had gone with his father to and saw him do hypnosis for some little girl who stuttered. And while she was in hypnosis, he stopped the stuttering. But he was not well versed, being a hobbyist. He had not learned how to create post hypnotic suggestions that stuck. So Dave was thinking, it didn't work, but because she started stuttering when it was done. But after he watched um, his father's pain be relieved by a visiting hypnotist that stopped by. And then he was able to actually not only get out of bed and play with the kids, but go and collect money from his clients, and took the train. Um, he he was able to realize that there was a lot more to it. There he was seeing the lasting effects.
And he was still very, very young at that time.
Yeah, he was 8 years old,
Yeah.
but he was an avid reader, like Larry. Larry taught himself to start to read at 4. He'd already gone through most of the kids' books, and his mom had to go to the library to give him special permission to go into the adult books because he needed to teach himself to read. Nobody would read him the airplane books. I mean, they were tired of it. So he wanted to, and we have 23 bookcases in this house. Probably at least 10 of them have to do with airplanes and history and naval vessels. So that was the stuff that really turned Larry on. And so he taught himself to read. And as a result, when Jake died, Larry started reading. I mean, Dave started reading. Dave started reading the books that Jake had.
Can you imagine somebody at age roughly 10 years old reading Bernheim? I have trouble getting through Bernheim. It's a very deep, very slow read.
Yeah.
And I said this in embarrassment at a hypnosis convention, and Shelley Stockwell laughed and said she had the same problem and had gotten just about as far into it as I had, which I considered a heavy compliment.
Yeah.
So
I think
imagine my father picking it up at age 10 and having used it to come up with fractionation by age 12.
yeah.
Dad had us all beat.
Well, he said the Elman induction has lasted for a long time, and it's only improved in just slight ways, any little tweak and for anybody that uses it. It's shared for the community. And I think that's what I really like about Dave is Dave was a sharing hypnotist.
Yeah, he was, and he would get the doctors to all share with each other also. If
Yeah.
somebody would come up with something, because they were out doing the field testing.
Yeah.
And so they would come up with something, they'd call him, and he would go. Pauline had the old Rolodexes, and he would have, and cross-referenced by specialty and the city and the names. And so she would have, before we had electronic, the old-fashioned big round ones they would travel with, and she would go call, give him resources to call people either in that specialty or in that area and give them the story of what they found and please test it and bring back the info.
About 2 or 3 months before he died, I drove down from Connecticut to there, and we all had dinner. And we were at dinner when the phone rang, and my mother got up because she was a lot faster than Dad was at that point, answered the phone, came back and said, Dave, I think you should take this call in the other room. It's Dr. whatever his name was. And my father disappeared for, 10 or 15 minutes and returned and said, Pauline, get out the Rolodex, the big one, which Cheryl's already described what a Rolodex is. And he then gave her some specifics. The person had to be a specialist in whatever it was. I don't remember. Remember, this would have been in the late 1960s, so it's close to 60 years ago. So my memory isn't perfect. But here's the specialty I want. The man must live more than X number of miles from this and this location and not have taken the class the year that we taught in thus and so city. And initially that sounded like a weird combo to me. Dad went on with a few other specs. The point was he wanted 3 or 4 doctors in the same specialty who could not whatsoever have been in class with this man or met him. So there'd be total separation. And he wanted them given the basic outline of the modification this particular doctor had made and asked them to field test it and then compare notes and see if it's something that should be added to the curriculum, even though he was no longer actively teaching. So this is only a few months before he died. And here he is organizing a research project in detail and with a great deal of thought and various requirements, like the requirement of keeping them separate, so on and so forth. Remember, I eventually became a research scientist. So I know how to do this. And for somebody who has not been through a master's or PhD program in research to have set up these rules, it was basically the same sort of rules you would get in major research today. And Dad was doing it off the top of his head. So watching him do this, I was very impressed. It was, for me, a very important moment. But it was only as I went on in my career doing research that I realized it proved not only did my father know hypnosis and was tremendous in that, but he had the wisdom and common sense to turn the things into research so that you could take the hypnosis on further. Another point that I think I should make is that the final lecture he gave, and I have recordings of it, at every course that he gave was, gentlemen, do not study only with me, go study with everybody else, because you never know what little piece of information you will get that will help you. I'm not the only show in town. And he would emphasize this, and he would emphasize the idea of hypnotists sharing methods. And,
I agree.
And he also,
yeah, if you got him off the podium and asked him why, he would describe how hypnotists in vaudeville shared methods and all got better that way.
Yeah.
And that's what he pushed. And I was very, very pleased at one point after Cheryl and I were teaching. I got into a situation of somebody who was stealing some stuff from us. When I say stealing, I don't mind somebody duping it or learning from me. That's not what I mean. I mean trying to put it out as their own.
Yeah.
And in the middle of that, I got a call from Jerry Kein. And I released my anger to Jerry about how wrong this was. And Jerry said, Larry, shut up and let them. Because the smart people realize that it all comes back to your father. It all comes back to what you teach and what I teach. It's free advertising. Stop arguing about it. And that from Jerry Kein was to me very inspiring, because he's following my father's philosophy. He's not only teaching Dad stuff, he's teaching it with the same love of the rest of humanity and the same, let's get it out and let's have it do some good.
Yeah. Jerry was
got on well with him.
Yeah.
And the generosity is a magnet to attract people.
Yeah.
to want to study with you, so
Yeah.
that's also good.
That's true. I agree totally with that. I mean, a lot of people do with me too. This, they take little bits and little whatever. Do what you will, because
I mean, think about it. Think about it. You have visited our classroom over the years
Yeah.
numerous times.
Mhm.
And I think and you would come in as a guest speaker. And when we would do a 9-day in-person class, we would have anywhere between 5 to this one class that came, a bunch of them came to you. We ended up doing 9 different guest speakers.
Yeah.
And we've had different ones. You were there, Sheila Granger was there. Richard Nongard, I think, came once. It was all different people would come.
And different styles.
And there was one class that we had, I think 5 different people from that class ended up studying with you.
Yeah.
And so there's that attraction. Quite a few people ended up taking virtual gastric band with Sheila. So expanding their knowledge, So here we are in our certification course, inviting in experts on different techniques, business and things, and sharing our clients, our students with them.
Yeah.
And that opened up a whole, because you're not necessarily going to be the expert on everything.
It didn't really hurt you guys, and it helped us, and it was really an interesting way of starting up our teaching,
Mm-hmm.
So that really, I thanked you for that.
Yeah.
And
mutual thanks. It's a mutual thanks.
It was fun.
Yeah.
And I think wherever you go around the world, everywhere. I'm trying to think of some of the places it is that you wouldn't even think of now, but it's in 100 different languages or more, and it goes forever. So
yeah, and that is the goal. That's been our goal. That's part due to, we've traveled to 17 countries in the last few years, going, and that's not to include the people that have zoomed into us for classes. You have traveled. How many countries have you taught in now? Do you know?
It must be at least the same.
Yep. Sean Michael Andrews has been 17 to 18. We were supposed to add 6 flags to our flags last year.
I haven't been keeping track, but the only reason I remember is, look at how many trainers I've got. So,
right.
That sort of tells me where I've been,
But yet we have trainers in countries we haven't been to. We have a trainer in Norway. We've never been to Norway. So yet it still expands without necessarily us having been there.
No.
I think that's important, but look at it. We were sharing, Sean Michael Andrews was sharing, you were sharing, we were all traveling globally. And the only reason I know how many countries is Sean Michael Andrews bought us those beautiful flags. Wait, it's on that side.
Yeah.
And so we went over how many countries we had taught in. And so he sent that to us as a gift, which was lovely.
Yeah. He's really a wonderful guy, really a good guy. And there's a lot of people in this profession who fall into a heritage of sharing and a heritage of helping each other, which is what makes it a fun profession to be in.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, would Dave Elman love conferences today? to have been able to collaborate so openly with so many different people that were doing it. He was really restricted and only worked with doctors and dentists because he was being challenged otherwise of doing medicine without a license.
Yes.
So he taught the professionals and got the field studies and everything through them. But they didn't have open conferences, I don't think back then, without being doctors, dentists. And I think there were a few, but nothing like today.
No, there were.
No, I mean, today the technology, for one thing, has helped us along a lot, especially COVID. And it's just the way it is. And I don't think it'll change a lot. I mean, it'll add live in back again, but they'll won't change the rest too much.
No.
Well, one of the nice things about what we're doing, what you're doing,
Yeah.
you get to a hypnotic conference, whether it be IACT, IMDHA, HypnoThoughts. I could name 4 or 5 others. I'm not trying to limit it. There's not only the lectures, which are good, well attended, enjoyable, and very educational, but in between them, you'll get a whole bunch of people who've just been to one of those talks, and they'll get together and they'll examine, nitpick, and compare it with what they're seeing in their practice. And they'll be exchanging examples. And I know when I've attended, I've always come away with, gee, I didn't know you could do that, or gee, that's another way of doing it, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think everybody else has too.
Yeah.
And that again is like we were just saying about learn from each other, learn from the profession, share.
Yeah. I think that's the ultimate. It matters a little bit today. People are trying to patent this and patent that. And it's just not the way it really should be. I don't think the mind should be covered with that. I
Right.
think it's totally a place to be open.
Right. If Gil Boyne had
Yeah.
gone and once he had the uses of the Dave Elman materials, if he had gone through and went after every single person that did something with the Dave Elman induction, a
Yeah.
lot of techniques would have been caught dead in their tracks. A lot of
Yeah.
hypnotists would have left as it was. Gil stated that I think 3% of all the people that studied with him became full-time hypnotists.
Yeah.
Lots of people either do it part-time. Some people want to do
Yeah.
it because just for themselves. We had a student that we thought he would be going on to do this, but he used it. He had an accident. So instead he used the techniques he learned about Dave's auto-suggestion and created his own technique that he could shut the pain off during the day and actually go and is a manager of working with cars and works on some race cars. And, so he uses it so that he didn't go through and work with other people, but he made it so he could go back to work. And
Yeah.
it's his own thing, and it becomes automatically, and he shuts it off at night because it's exhausting. So, but yet through that, sharing that story, other people have done that too. So just think about, just like Dave had an evolution of his course within the course from when Larry took it the first time, and then when he took it years later,
Well,
it had
I guess
changed.
you can understand how, when you're training, how it teaches us new things.
Yeah, it's your students give you feedback, you observe things. So just seeing Larry was, I think, in one of the first courses you taught with Ted at NGH, when it took 4 of you to get him out of Esdaile. If you remember, he took your pre or post
And
course.
he liked being there.
Oh yeah, he did.
Which brings up an interesting point. People would wonder why it was that somebody in Esdaile was not responsive. Why can't I emerge somebody in Esdaile? My father did something that, if you look as a scientist, was brilliant. Everybody else had been experimenting on them. He said, no, I'm going to ask the ones who've been there to say what it looks like from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And when he learned what it looked like from the inside, the reason they didn't want to emerge became obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody had asked that question. And so the result was, throughout all the times he taught, he insisted that every one of his students both be hypnotized and feel it on the inside, and then hypnotize somebody else. And then he'd warn all of them. Every time you are hypnotized, there's the possibility of it won't feel the same way as the last time. Accept that. Know that it feels different. Because if you can accept that idea, then when a client or patient acts a little bit different than you expect, it's not going to bother you. You're going to adapt to it. To me, that's a very, very wise piece of statement, because to this day, I see people on the internet saying, well, when you're in hypnosis, it always feels like so-and-so. No, it feels like that to you.
So,
Yeah.
so going back to that evolution of how even your Simpson protocol has changed over the years, starting from
Lot.
that first time that you taught it
Mhm.
to where it's at now.
Yeah.
And so that's what hypnosis has been doing by people sharing,
Yes.
and,
Yes.
that's what we're looking to do also with the conference.
With the conference, I really like the idea of the conference because I like Dave Elman and I like you.
Yeah.
But the whole idea is very good. It really is. Let me see.
We're being inclusive of other techniques, but how were they influenced by Dave Elman in
Okay.
getting to them?
Okay, so they're including many techniques already started by Dave Elman, and
Right.
it all went off in different directions.
Right. So somebody that, like, there'll be somebody talking about, I think it was Carl Smith is going to be talking about conversational hypnosis.
Yeah.
Your hypnosis is done, more in the client's mind. So all the different ways that people have gone with it,
Yeah.
but yet the common thread is, how were they influenced by what they learned from Dave Elman or Dave Elman type techniques? And I think that's part of it, so if everybody were just coming on and just talking about the Dave Elman induction, there's so many other aspects of it,
Yeah.
which could be really interesting.
Yeah.
You go back and you examine in his book the magic spot. He gives full credit to the physician who originally came up with it.
Yeah.
And he examines, why does it work? It's basically using waking hypnosis on a very young child. So that's all, quote, all it is, except it's done artistically and it works. So if you take that and you examine it, can you expand on that and use it in more places? Yes, you can. But fitting it into what three of us have been saying, credit to the guy who first tried it, explanation of why it works, getting everybody else to try it and find variants of it. It's all the sort of thing we've just been saying in a microcosm of one particular technique. You can do a similar analysis of many other techniques in there.
When we first started this, I thought that, everybody was looking for the magic words, the magic script. And, we set it up as a six-step process. And yet I didn't realize till a little further into it, it really didn't matter if you got all those steps in or if you switch the order of it.
Yeah.
Because if you go and read in Dave Elman's book, sometimes people went to somnambulation just because he said, close your eyes, try to open them and you can done. And yet it was the expectation. It was the confidence.
Yeah.
So in fact, I love Tom Nicoli put in to speak, and his sees it as like the Dave Elman induction is like a trapeze, just shooting you off with confidence. And I just loved his little metaphor of it and how that can just launch you.
Yeah.
And just being able to have that confidence and know that where the client's at.
Yeah.
So
So
Yep.
why don't we talk about the conference now?
The conference is scheduled June 12th and 13th.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I am now opening up the Friday on the 11th also, because there are still people that want to speak. And so I think it's going to be 3 days available, same price, same everything. I think we talked about the networking, of what you get at conferences, and we're going to have areas that there will be that opportunity. There will be a hospitality room.
Yeah.
There will be a room where people can come in and record their cases or their thoughts of how Dave influenced them, so we can gather this information. And also, I really miss going out to lunch and dinner. How many lunches and dinners have we had over the years, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm looking at how we will have the Dave Elman Cafe. I'm not sure how many hours it'll be open or what we'll be doing, but people will be able to go with their group and get a table or a room and sit down and spend time together over. It's BYOB, BYOF. Bring your own bottle, bring your own food. And for people that don't know anybody, it could be like the concept of the hibachi table, at a Japanese restaurant. You just, go into it and you'll meet people, new people,
Yeah.
So there'll be different things going on in those rooms. And the goal is, of course, the more people are there, the more people will still be in the rooms listening and still be able to get some of the other social aspects, getting in a little exercise to get away from the computer. Is that a cool idea? I know. But yeah, so it was interesting. One of our trainers was just talking today about the possibilities of blue light and how we're all affected by blue light because we're all on Zoom so much now, and how to actually give yourself suggestions in blue light that you're actually taking steps and doing things.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So that could be interesting. So there'll be all different kinds of things, and bringing in people from around the world. There's a doctor from Brazil that'll be there talking about hypnosis in the Amazon. And he and a group of doctors go up the rivers in the Amazon a couple times a year and bring hypnosis and medicine where there's no pharmacy, no hospitals, to the people living along the rivers. That's interesting. One of our trainers in Australia is going to be talking about the sleep temples of ancient Egypt. And the hypnosis in the sleep temples, and healing suggestions and how that was. And she's been taking people on tours of that for years. So there'll be a lot of different, unusual, interesting topics, besides all of the Elman stuff. And the goal is, by doing it 12 hours a day, we will have at least 5-6 hours that just about anybody from any continent can pop in and get each day, but it'll also be all recorded. And for speakers, I'm hoping the speakers are interested. The goal is to transcribe all those presentations and put together a volume and in my head, I sort of see it as the evolution of the Dave Elman legacy or something like that. We're all contributing where we've gone through that influence. Do you like that idea?
I really like the idea.
And then do, something like Sheila and Jason teach about the launch, doing the book launch all at once and shooting it up to bestseller, and everybody that are speakers that want to will be collaborators in this.
Mhm.
And even relating it and putting in quotes of Dave's from the book for each subject matter as if it were in his book, and then I think I just love that idea of keeping this going forward.
Yes, it's going forward more. I don't think there's a chance that Dave Elman will get left in the dust, because I think you've done one good job. And for me, I know that I used it was a Bible,
Right.
his book,
Yep.
you know.
And it is required reading in the Bible of
Yeah.
many schools,
Yeah.
and many companies
Mhm.
use it, as required reading, or have been adapted. Their methods have been adapted off of it and presented. So, but the good thing is, keeping it open, keeping it there. And I love your idea of open source software,
Software.
because and in a way, won't those presentations recorded be like that,
Mhm.
where, so really good.
So again, what dates are they? I'll make you repeat them.
June 11th, 12th, 13th. I have to change it on the website. Right now it says the 12th and 13th.
Yes, the
I've been
11th.
teetering. Should we do it? Should we not do it? Do you like the idea of 3 days so
Yes,
more people have more
I
hours
think
they
it's
can
very
do?
generous of you to put in that.
Yep. And I wanted to be the bride. I've always planned my 2 weddings. I planned them and I orchestrated them. And I want to be the bride with a wedding planner. So we are actually hiring somebody, especially because we don't have great internet, hiring somebody to run the 3 consecutive rooms,
Okay.
simultaneous rooms with the speakers. And then I'll have some people running those other rooms and have, people, volunteers or pay people. So we're putting money into the functioning of it,
Yeah.
which will be great. And then also, so I can also pop into the rooms and listen,
Yeah.
because all these years of attending conferences, I always had a table. And I was glued to my table, as you know.
I
We
know.
were glued together. And it was funny, the last Hypno Thoughts Live, I wasn't taking a table, and then we didn't go. So, I don't know how much traveling we're going to do in the future. Larry and I had a conversation in 2010 about doing a Dave Elman retreat. And back then we didn't have any following. People didn't really know us. We had spoken, I think, once at that point at the NGH. And it would have taken so much money to just put that in place, and then people have to spend a lot of money to come.
Yep.
Now you can get so much out of a conference and people don't have to travel. It opens up the world for coming to conferences that they could never have before traveled, to hearing speakers, to
Well,
meeting
one
speakers.
of the main things is that around the world they have a conference or a second conference. Nobody has as many conferences as the United States.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. And we get an awful lot of people coming from overseas because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've not only made a number of friends that way, but I've learned that there are nuances because of nuances in various languages.
Yes.
There are nuances in how hypnosis is done from place to place. And so the result is when we began traveling overseas, I had a more open mind on that. And I learned quite a bit from our hosts.
Yes.
Well,
When you
we
think
were
of the
running such
cultural
open
differences,
hosts.
What were you saying,
when you
Ida?
think of the cultural differences in all the
Oh,
parts of the world, you have to take into consideration a lot of things when you do hypnosis.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the conference information is, we have a new website. The
Mhm.
old website, Dave Elman Hypnosis Institute, which was always a mouthful, .com, is actually, the software is being retired. The front end is already retired and the back end's going to be retired really soon. So we built a new one, and we started building it years ago with Richard Nongard. It's been an ongoing project, but it is now elmanhypnosis.com.
Okay.
And right on the second tab is the Elman Conference.
Okay.
So you can find it. We're updating the speakers. Some speakers are going out, lots of new speakers are going in. And now that we're opening Friday, we can take some more speakers if
Okay.
people are interested. And also anybody interested in volunteering, elmanhypnosis.com, and it is the Elman conference. And please look at it. We're open right now. I'm trying to think of great topics for panels, to put people together
Yep.
and to hear. So if you could think of anything, please email us and let us know. Dave Elman Hypnosis at gmail.com. And tickets are for sale. And the earlier you get them, the more bonuses are going to be included. Yay.
Yeah. I really like that. I think that's well done and will enjoy it. I can't think of anything better.